If you're new to our channel, we'd love to have you join our little community. Just hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. We promise it will be worth your while.
The modern world is a technological world where almost every single machine or device is powered by or uses electricity in some way. But what if electricity, after its discovery, had been kept a secret from the general population, and only a select few very knowledgeable and privileged people had access to it, or knew how to manipulate it? Would these people be classed as magicians, witches, or wizards by those who couldn't use or understand it? Now imagine the real world, the one that we all live on. A world where almost everyone relies on technology, but a small section of sensitive people can and do use and manipulate energies that have not yet been discovered by science and can mask their existence easily to keep the populace blissfully unaware of the wonders around them. So the next time that you think you may have seen something curious or strange out of the corner of your eye, you very probably did. I've been watching him for some time now, on and off, and every day almost exactly the same thing. He leaves his squat and old run-down red-brick terraced house he shares with several other of society's rejects just before lunchtime and goes down to the market to try with various degrees of success to steal, beg, and borrow to feed himself. And his drug habit. Of course, he never sees me. Why would he even notice me? Today starts off not really that different from any other day for this slowly failing piece of human filth as he shuffles into an alleyway, sits behind some bins, and shoots up after first visiting with his supplier. I watch as he carelessly discards his used syringe onto the ground before he sits quietly for a few minutes, basking in the unfulfilled afterglow of his latest fix. As he's been taking heroin for so long now, he no longer gets high. It's now just something he needs to get himself through the day. Sometime later, he gets up and staggers a little before his balance is restored, and then heads towards his spot in the park via the nearest discount off license. He's already at the park when I arrive. Quickly, I mount a fence and walk along its length before leaping over onto a handy nearby branch of an old pear tree in order to get a better view. He's nearly halfway through his second cheap can of lager when I finally observe him once more slumped against a park bench, quietly muttering incoherently to himself. I just don't understand my fascination with this man. Why do I keep following him? Because as of yet, I have not observed one redeeming feature in him. Quietly resting on the sturdy branch in the sunshine shaded by the tree, I observe him. I can occasionally see his almost lifeless eyes when he turns and looks around and wonder if at any point in his life he had cared for anyone other than himself. I creep closer to him as if stalking prey, and then sit once again out of sight. After nearly an hour sitting staring at his half-finished can of lager and taking the occasional sip from it, he looks wearily up and to his right as he notices something by the old pavilion. He then starts to watch a woman who is slowly walking alongside an electrically operated wheelchair. In the wheelchair is a girl. She looks to me to be 8 or 9 years old, but it's hard to tell as her small frame is twisted and contorted as a result of whatever illness she's suffering from. Her hand forms an obscene claw as it somehow manages to manipulate the joystick that controls her wheelchair. Then I observe him suddenly sitting up straight as the wheelchair comes towards him. And then as the wheelchair reaches him, it stops. "Hello, Mrs. Smart. Hello, Emily, and how are you today?" croaks the man. The woman accompanying the wheelchair smiles weakly at him. "I'm sorry, David, but Emily is having a bad day today. I took her to get her hair cut short to make it more manageable, and I think she's upset at me about it. I thought that coming to the park may cheer her up a little, but it hasn't." The man called David then got up from his seat, temporarily abandoning his precious lager. He returns a few seconds later after rummaging around in the flower beds behind his seat with a tiny blue flower, which he places in a buttonhole on the little girl's blouse. Emily's face contorts into a grimace, and she makes a low growl. I sense from the little girl immense gratitude. This surprises me greatly. "A pretty flower for a brave and pretty girl. I hope I'll see you tomorrow, Emily," says David as he smiles and looks directly at her. I'm afraid that Emily may not be coming to the park for much longer with David, as her doctors are recommending procedures that would make her bed-bound for most of the time, stated her mum sadly. I then watched as David leant over and kissed Emily on the forehead. Emily and her mum then set off up the hill towards the old library, whilst David sat back down. He just sat and watched as the little girl's wheelchair left him. I needed a clearer view, so I dropped to the ground and headed over towards David's seat. Hopping up next to him, I start to purr. He notices me and looks down. To my complete surprise, I notice a tear had run down his face and stained its path clean. I sit on the seat next to him on his bench, and he absent-mindedly reaches out to stroke my fur. If I were still human, I would have smiled at this point, as the physical contact between the two of us now afforded me the opportunity to look into his mind. Ugh, what a mess of conflicting emotions and self-loathing, I think to myself, as I attempt to wade through the noise and confusion in his mind as I access his memories. As I delve deeper, pictures form in my mind as I sift through his memories, and I see through his eyes himself as a teen. He's playing in woods with a girl. She looks to be roughly Emily's age, if not a little younger. The image becomes clearer as I filter out more noise from David's troubled mind. David is now chasing the young girl up the hill of a woodland path. She's giggling and laughing as she runs from him. Eventually, as they reach the top of the hill, the trees clear, and a large grassed area comes into view with a boating lake and children's playground. The young girl sprints towards the playground and reaches one of the many swings. She sits on the wooden seat suspended by 2 chains from an overhead beam. "Come on, slow coach," she shouts as her bare legs dangle over the seat of the swing. "Give me a push, big brother." David starts to push his sister on the swing, and he is very happy. I delve even deeper into David's memory. David is now standing with his sister in what looks to be a very nice and modern kitchen for its time. He's pouring 2 glasses of fizzy lemonade from a glass bottle. "So, big brother, will you still come home to see me during the holidays?" "Of course I will, Mags, and I'm only going to be in halls for the first year. After that I may just commute." Mags smiles at her big brother, and she looks so proud of him. "Will I have to call you Dr. David when you get your degree then?" "No, silly, it will take a long time before I qualify as a doctor, but you can always call me what you want, little sis." Daniel passes his sister a glass of lemonade. She takes it from him, but whilst carrying it towards the dining table, the glass tumbler slips from her hand and smashes on the tiled floor of the kitchen. "Whoopsie, I've got butterfingers today, haven't I?" I start to have a bad feeling as to why this memory is so implanted in David's mind. I compose myself and delve further into his troubled and confused memories. It's now sometime around Christmas as I notice that some of the gardens have decorations in them as David walks along his parents' street. David must be coming home from university, I think to myself. He is now standing by the front door. I watch as he puts the key into the door lock. He opens the door and walks in. Then as he closes the door behind him, his parents rush out from the living room to see him and greet him, but not his sister. "Where is Mag's dad? You said she'd been unwell, is she okay?" There was a pause before David's father finally answered. "Magdalene didn't want you to worry, son, but she's deteriorated quite some since your last visit." Just then, he noticed his sister was just coming out of the living room. She was moving slowly and was using a walking stick. She seemed very happy to see her big brother. David rushed over to her, picked her up, and hugged her tightly. David's next memories start to become jumbled and darker, and convinced that he could help his sister. He started to study almost every waking second. His focus was on neurodegenerative disorders. I then see several snippets of memory from visits home. Mag's body was now failing fast. Firstly, she had to use a walker to get about, and then a wheelchair. And then on David's final visit home, his sister was confined to a hospital bed with a machine breathing for her. I finally pull out from David's mind, as I see through his eyes him standing looking down as a small coffin that is slowly being lowered into a grave. David is looking at me now quizzically. "If I didn't know a better cat, I would swear that you were crying," he said to me as he gently stroked my fur. Shit, this new body is taking some getting used to, I think to myself. David looks around as though he has heard something. I brush against him once more and quickly delve into his mind once more. I see in the final year of his degree his grades plummet, his first flirtation with drugs, and then him being asked politely to leave university. I watch as David starts to steal money and items from his parents to feed his developing drug habit. and then his desperate father reluctantly and apologetically throws him out of their home, as his mother stands by her husband crying, then his slow decline into petty crime, addiction, and alcoholism. High Street outside of TK Maxx, meet with me. Ow, how that hurt. You didn't have to shout so loud, I think, as I'm quickly wrenched back into the real world. David is now busy rolling a cigarette, so I slip off the bench and head towards the high Saints. Being so small and agile has its advantages, and also its disadvantages, as I try to avoid being trodden on as I approach Martha. Martha is a beautiful and statuesque woman. Today she is dressed all in black and is wearing a large, dark, floppy sun hat to protect her pale skin from the sunshine. She looks totally out of place here, but no one notices. I brush against her lovely stockinged legs and heels as I pass by her. Oh, how I miss wearing beautiful clothing. But for now, hey-ho, this is my lot. I leap up onto the wall beside Martha. Well? Well, what? I inquire as I look up at her. What do you think of him? Personally, I think it may be a little too late to save him from his self-destructive nature, but... But what, Diana? Interrupted Martha. He seems to become almost normal when he's confronted by an unfortunate young girl in a wheelchair. I believe she reminds him of his deceased sister, and he seems to really care about her. Good, then we'll start with her. He has the gift, we just need to make sure that he uses it correctly. Are you sure about him, Martha? Martha looked down on me. The decision was not mine, Diana. It came from the council. He is your responsibility for now, at least. Thank you for your confidence in me, Martha. I will do my best, I promise. Martha then picks me up and kisses me on the lips, and then hugs me to her chest. I miss you so much, Diana. She then lowers me to the ground and slowly walks away from me. I guard my mind before thinking, I miss you too, my love. As you may already have guessed, I am a cat. I haven't always been a cat, however, as until 3 months ago I was a very happy and contented 447-year-old witch. Oh, I know what you are thinking. Ugly woman with hooked nose, pointy hat that flies around on a broomstick? Wrong. I was at the time of my untimely death working in local government as a clerk in the housing department, and I loved my job. It was whilst waiting for the bus one very pleasant spring evening after shopping at my local supermarket that I was hit by a runaway car and killed. The driver of the car had suffered a stroke at the wheel and lost control. As I lay broken on the pavement, I did the only thing I could to survive and transferred my essence over to a passing ginger tabby cat after she had kindly offered me her body. I then watched from the shadows as my body died, whilst watched over by horrified onlookers who stood by and did absolutely nothing to save me. The only person that even attempted to save me was a middle-aged homeless alcoholic drug addict, who I now know to be called David. Unfortunately, my body was too badly damaged by the accident for even the strongest of healing magic to cure, so I am now stuck inside my small furry prison until I can find and inhabit another suitable body. Meanwhile, I have been given a job to do by the council. David has great potential to do good in the world. Unfortunately, he also has the potential to do great evil. He is currently not aware of his powers, and as such they are dormant. This is a really good thing, as he is currently a very angry and embittered youngish man. Oh, well, no rest for the non-wicked. I find David once more wandering the local high street, harassing local shoppers asking, "Money for a cup of tea, mate?" Original, I think to myself, as I watch him from the relative safety of a yard wall. Oh well, may as well get started. I drop to the ground and start to walk alongside him. This is going to be tricky, I think, as I start to concentrate on influencing David's thoughts. "Money for a cuppa, mate?" he asks. "Money for a cuppa, money for some food for my pet cat, please?" He looks a little surprised at himself at saying something different, but continues. I walk alongside David and look up at the passers-by and try to look cute. "Excuse me, could you spare a little to help me feed my cat, please?" A young woman and her small daughter stop and give David a 2-pound coin. "Oh, thank you," David says, unaware that I am influencing his mind. I stay with David for half an hour longer, directing his thoughts whilst trying to make some sense of his beautiful but disjointed mind. In the end, David ends up with nearly 12 pounds in loose change. He is very pleased with himself and decides to treat himself to an extra fix from his dealer. Oh no, you don't. I then use my limited powers to vibrate the balance sections of his inner ears, violently causing a wave of nausea and sickness so powerful it almost cripples him. David rushes over to the curb and vomits violently into the drain. I concentrate once more. A nice piece of fish would be lovely today. David wipes his mouth with the sleeve of his threadbare jumper. I think I'll treat myself to a nice bit of fish. David then heads over to the fishmonger at the end of the hyacint and gets 2 very nice pieces of smoked haddock. I follow David home to the squat that he shares with several other people. I look up at him as he enters the front door. "Come on in then," he says. I enter the filthy squat and follow him into the even worse kitchen. David finds 2 dirty plates and unwraps the smoked fish. But before he can put the fish on the plates, I mentally suggest that he washes the plates first. David grills his fish, but he gives me mine cold. I enjoy it immensely. I can now see David looking at me, wondering why he's just shared his evening meal with a stray ginger tabby cat. Smiling, he says to himself, "You're losing it, Dave. It must have been some bad junk." He then starts to scratch his balls through his trousers. Ooh, how uncouth! David's housemates totally ignore me as he heads up to his bedroom. I follow 2 or 3 steps behind. He enters his room and flops onto an old mattress lying on the bare floorboards of his room. He then opens his little tobacco pouch and starts to roll himself a cigarette. Filthy habit. Says David as he looks around his room. Oops, better turn down the volume. It appears that David is more sensitive than I thought. I curl up beside his mattress as he smokes. Soon, though, David falls asleep. I then move on to his mattress with him. His reliance on both drugs and alcohol is great. But in order to help him, I am going to have to temporarily lessen his addiction and need for a fix. So I start to add what in modern terms would be called negative feedback loops within his mind to try and lessen his need to dampen his bad memories. I then do a little housekeeping and ordering in his mind before making him more accepting of my presence. When David wakes the next morning, I am just returning from my morning toilet in the tiny front garden. "Oh, hello there, cat. I thought you would be gone by now." I move over to his side and start to rub myself against him and purr gently. David absent-mindedly starts to stroke my fur. I can see that he is in withdrawal now and will need a fix soon, but I'm determined that I will delay him just a little longer before he gets it. Just over an hour later, David is once again slumped against several black plastic bin bags in a back lane behind the shops, whilst he enjoys what will be a very short high. I sit quietly by his side whilst he rolls his eyes and sighs. I wonder if the Salvation Army would let me use their showers, I mentally suggest to my stoned charge whilst he lays next to me. It is just over 2 hours later that David emerges from the nearest Salvation Army mission clean and shaved with several new items of clothing. And what is even better, he no longer upsets my keen sense of smell. His gratitude is real, as he thanks the young uniformed woman at the front door. David now heads himself towards the park. I know why he is heading there, and I follow at his side. Once at the park, David sits down at his usual spot and waits on the footpath between the old pavilion and the library in the shade of the tree. And whilst watching the old men and women in their whites play bowls on the green, he starts to doze. Good, this will give me the opportunity to hopefully have a chat with Emily if she turns up, I think to myself. Sitting guard by my dozing friend, I first notice Emily's mum, and then Emily, who turn into this section of the park through a very large open wrought iron gate near to the old pavilion a second or two later. I drop down from the bench and stroll over to both Emily and her mum. It is obvious from even several meters away that Emily is not happy, as her mind is literally screaming out to be heard. "Hello, Emily." The noise stops dead for a second, then continues. "Hello, Emily, can you hear me?" "Of course I can hear you, but I can't speak, can I? Stupid person." "You're speaking to me, Emily, and I can hear you." "Ha, oh great, I'm going loony too, oh that's just brilliant." "Oh, Emily, you are not going to be lonely. I promise you, I'm speaking to your mind directly." "What? Really? But I can't see you, where are you?" I'm walking alongside your wheelchair with your mum. You must be a really short person then. Yes, I am. At the moment I'm a cat, but until recently I was a witch. Really? Emily replied with interest. Yes, really, look. I know that you don't believe me and you think you're going a bit mad, but please just hear me out. I am trying to help David the drunk. Oh, I really like him. He still looks at me and smiles. He doesn't pretend I'm not there. Yes, Emily, he's a very special person. Unfortunately, he doesn't know it yet. So how are you going to help David then, cat person? Well, that is where you come in, Emily. I want him to help you to get better. After a long pause, Emily finally spoke. I was told by my mummy that there is no cure for my illness, that it was incurable. It is incurable, Emily, by medicine that is, but if we use a lot of very powerful magic and ask your body nicely to stop misbehaving itself, I promise that you will get better. Honestly? Honestly, witch's honor. Is that really a thing? Asks Emily. It's my promise, but you must swear to me that you will never talk of your recovery to anyone ever, Emily. I promise, the cat person. Good, thank you. I will speak to you again soon, but first I'm going to pop into your mum's mind and get her to cancel that nasty medical procedure the doctors want to do to you next week. Bye, ye cat person. Then I directed my attention to Emily's mum, Clara. Her mind was tidy, warm, and ordered. She really did not want her daughter to have the feeding and breathing tubes fitted to her, so it was easy to modify her thoughts to refuse the procedures. Returning to David, I hopped up onto the bench and started to meow loudly. Oh, it's just you. I'm surprised you're still here. I sit and start to purr contentedly, causing him to start and stroke my fur. I entered David's mind once more, and without him noticing, started to give him subtle hints. Emily and her mum approached Daniel. Hello, Daniel. You look air cleaner today, commented Mrs. Smart. Oh, I had a shower today. Thought I'd show a bit of effort. Mrs. Smart smiled at David. And how are you today, Emily? Emily produced a few grunts. I know, a little flower for a beautiful young lady. David left Emily in her wheelchair and returned a few seconds later with a buttercup and placed it in the strap buttonhole of her pinafore dress. He then touched her hand very gently. It was in the split second that their skin touched that I suggested to his subconscious mind. Look deeply at Emily. David wasn't even really conscious of what I was asking him to do. Analyze her condition. What do you see? Nothing, said a voice from deep within David's subconscious. Look harder. Look for what's wrong with Emily. I hoped that this would not take too long to perform, as in my present body, my powers were nowhere near as strong as they used to be. Motor functions impaired, speech impaired, motor neuron disease maybe? No, look deeper. Oh. Finally a breakthrough? David was actually seeing her condition in his own mind. He was visualizing it, and long dormant memories of long nights of research came back to him. The cerebellum, it's spinocerebellar ataxia, that's really rare. I then quickly asked, so what are you going to do about it then? I don't understand, it's incurable. Look closer at the cells in Emily's cerebellum, what do you see? Neurons, motor neurons, they're dying. They are being attacked by something. I don't understand, wait, this is a genetic disease, it's inherited. Well done, David, now fix it. But how? Start with the cause for now to stop any further damage. Think. It's caused by inherited gene mutations. Good. David's research on his own sister's condition and his medical training was now finally being useful to him. Right. Now highlight the mutations globally in your mind and remove them. Now think really hard. Oh, this is incredible. I can see that they have changed color. It's like I've highlighted them. Now tell them to go. What? Just tell them? Yes, but hurry. I was weakening now and wouldn't be able to hold my focus much longer. I could also hear a dog barking. You lot go, you're not wanted here, go. Oh God, they have just gone. Emily's DNA is now clear of both the mutant genes and proteins. Gee. Good, now pull back, I suggested urgently. David sat back onto his seat, for in the real world only a split second had passed, but both David and I were now exhausted, and he didn't even know why. I might see you tomorrow, David, said Emily's mum, as she continued on her way, oblivious to the epic battle David had just waged inside Emily's small and twisted body. Emily was still very poorly, though, as countless numbers of her brain's motor cells had been destroyed over the last couple of years. As her disease had progressed unchecked, this, however, was a job for future times. "We'll see you in a couple of days, Emily." "Bye, cat person," thought Emily. She sounded quite cheerful now, but I knew that in a few minutes she may not be. But in my weakened state, there was nothing I could do about that now. I watched as the wheelchair whirred up the hill with Emily's mother by its side, and then yawned and stretched before resting on the seat. David, however, was now throwing up into the flower bed, as an unfortunate side effect of taking Emily's disease from her.